please let me know, and we can cover the key questions that you have. We are recording this session, so you will be able to go back to our website and access this in the future for a replay or clarification. So thank you for joining us. I'm just going to start from the slide. I'll just check with Linda. Is that coming up? Oh, no, I haven't. No, I'll just share so that you can see my slides, and just share PowerPoint. So can you now see that, Belinda? Beautiful. Okay, so getting started. This, I've got week 4, it's actually week 5, we're in student support session. And this one, I was going to get Belle to do the outline, but I'm online, so I'll do this for you. We're going to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge that the country for Aboriginal peoples is an interconnected set of ancient and sophisticated relationships. The University of Wollongong spreads across many interrelated Aboriginal countries that are bound by this sacred landscape, an intimate relationship with that landscape since creation, from Sydney to the Southern Highlands to the South Coast, from freshwater to bitter water to salt, from city to urban to rural. The University of Wollongong acknowledges the custodianship of the Aboriginal peoples of this place and space, and that has kept alive the relationships between all living things. The university acknowledges the devastating impact of colonisation on our campuses and our footprint, and commit ourselves to truth-telling, healing and education. We come to you live tonight from Dharawal country in the Yuin Nation. We are recording this session via WebEx, and it will be made available by the Faculty of Business and Law events page. If you keep your microphone muted at the moment and make sure it stays muted, that will make sure we get the best quality recording. So you can ask questions through the WebEx chat. And you can submit them anonymously or with your name, and we'll try and work through the questions during the presentation and also after. So this session is about assessment and feedback. So where I'm going to start with is some background on assessment, or some key principles around assessment, to try and help put things in perspective. So about subject assessments. All assessments of your subjects that are graded are in your subject outline. Sometimes there might be an activity or a quiz or something in a class, but if it doesn't appear in your subject outline, it won't be a graded assessment. So just to recap on one point, because your assessment information is in your subject outline, it cannot be added to. Those are the assessments that will be graded. So there are no surprise quizzes that will be graded. Anything else there is a feedback or activity. You must attempt all assessment tasks in your subject, but unless it is specifically noted, you do not necessarily have to pass all your assessment tasks. So if you fail one of your earlier assessments or get a poorer mark than you expected, you can still pass your subject, particularly if you learn from your errors. The key question or the key point is, don't panic. This is where you need to speak to your tutor or subject coordinator, who can help guide you as to how to improve your outcomes. My share just stopped. Okay. All assessment values are noted in your subject outline. So there is a summary in the start of Part B of your subject outline which says what number of belong to the subject and what the weighting or the percentage of a grade. So you end up with a final grade for a subject out of 100. So this gives you the percentages. The assessment value is shown against the individual assessment as well. Every subject has a minimum performance requirement in a major piece of assessment, which is usually the final assessment, where you must pass, have or achieve a passing grade in the assessment task itself. If you don't pass the major piece of assessment, you may actually technically, or what's called a technical fail for the subject. So why do we have assessment this way in universities? It's about achieving a subject learning outcome. So every subject has been designed and has a list of student learning outcomes, and these also appear in your subject outline. Assessments are designed to assess whether or not you have achieved the learning outcomes. So these are all interrelated. Learning outcomes and assessment tasks and subject and course materials go through a rigorous quality assurance process. So we can't just change our mind in the middle of a session, and we can't change our mind between session. All these things go through a formal approval process and appear in the course handbook and also in your subject outlines. Just to explain what a minimum performance requirement is and what it means. And this is another section that's shown in your subject outline. So it specifies what's required. So first point is all assessment tasks must be attempted and submitted. You must gain an overall mark of 50 for the subject. So that is the grades you have earned through every assessment task. So 50 is the passing point. And this also has to be achieved after any penalties for late submission or misconduct are applied. So if you've submitted an assessment task late and you don't have academic consideration, you may lose late submission penalties. So you have to achieve a passing grade in the final exam or major piece of assessment. So this information is actually shown in your subject outline. So now I get to assessment feedback. How do I get my results and my feedback? So the assessment details in your subject outline not only saying what the question is or the task that you have to complete, but there is also the details about how you submit it and how the assessment details are returned. Quizzes, such as online multiple choice quizzes, which are shown in this example here, are usually available after the submission deadline. So grades for those things will be showing on your Moodle site. Depending on how that assessment task contributes to your final grade, will depend whether it's shown just on Moodle or also shown in SOLs. So in this example, this is from our first year marketing subject. There are a series of quizzes, but the best 8 out of 10, I believe, are chosen for this particular one. So the final grade for that assessment will show at the end of session. But you'll be able to look at the grades you get for the individual assessments as soon as the cut-off time has been passed for each test. Where you get your assessments back for, say, a written assessment task, a group work task, some other piece of assessment, again, it will list the assessment return. So in this particular example, under item 2, the workshop group exercise is worth 25% of this particular assessment. You'll get your mark for this assessment within 10 working days of the workshop. It says formative feedback will be given during the workshop. So this might be in the form of a verbal commentary, or it could even be a grading sheet. With written assessment tasks, such as an essay or a report or a group report, academics actually have to grade them. So this takes time to read and assess against the criteria. So the time frame that is going to be used for this in the assessment task is shown in the assessment task. This can be up to 3 weeks. depending on the assessment task and the number of students taking the subject. And this is in accordance with UOW assessment and feedback policy. This allows time for the academic or academics to grade the assessment tasks, but just like students have academic consideration for illness or things, we also have to look after our staff as well. And these timeframes try to allow for that. You receive your final grade for a subject, which incorporates your grade for the final assessment task when results are released at the end of session. So if your subject has an exam in the exam period, which is around week 14 or 15 of session, there's time allowed for that to be graded as well. So the date is available on the key date session, and that says release of results, and that will be your final grade for the subject, whether you've passed the subject or whether you've achieved a higher grade for the subject, such as a credit, a distinction, or a high distinction. Final assessment tasks are usually not returned to students, but you can seek feedback from your subject coordinators after the results are released. So if you went to one of your academics before the release of results, they are not able to talk to you about your final assessment task. So this is going to come to the point of what is actually feedback. Feedback on assessment tasks occurs in a number of different ways. So it can be formal as far as a written comment. It can be marked on your actual paper of submission, or it could also be spoken comments in relation to an assessment task. So if your subject has group work or a group presentation, the facilitator, the tutor, the subject coordinator may talk to you after your presentation to give you feedback. So feedback does not always have to be written. It can be spoken, and it mightn't actually be labelled as feedback. So formative feedback can include things like comments or clarification, you asking a question, can you guide me this? It may be a discussion in a consultation period. These are all forms of feedback where you are interacting with academics. Feedback, you really have to remember that feedback may not be labelled it. I won't comment to a student and say, hey, I'm about to give you feedback. It might be my response to a question. So feedback embraces a large number of things. When you're seeking feedback or you've asked a question seeking clarification, taking notes is a really good idea. And that's another way of capturing the feedback for later use. Assessment feedback is related to the marking criteria. You need to meet the criteria to get the marks. If you have not applied for academic consideration and you submit your assessment late, it will have marks deducted because it's about getting your work in on time. And if you think, well, why does it have to be on time? Deadlines apply in daily life, they apply in business, and this is getting you used to those sorts of things. Also, it means that we can get all the marks processed in an appropriate way. If you have an approved academic consideration for late submission, this will also delay your grading and feedback. So if you've been given an extra week to submit your assignment, then the time frame for processing that grading and feedback will also be delayed. So other things, multiple choice quiz feedback is dependent upon the setup of the quiz and usually confined to grades. So you might find that you got 8 answers out of 10 correct. Varying approaches with tutorials will occur in feedback of multiple choice quizzes. If academics notice that students have not passed a particular question on a multiple choice quiz, that might be the subject that's talked about in a following tutorial. Other ways of getting feedback is, and this is a method I've used myself for report and essay assignments, is to also give some general feedback to the class as a whole, highlighting where people did really well in meeting criteria, highlighting great approaches to answering questions, but also highlighting what could be done better. The method of that type of feedback helps you understand where you are in relation to the class so that you can help build on those things or learn other ways of improving your grades. Some group assessments, such as presentations, may occur in class or distributed via a group leader. So we can't necessarily copy the assessment feedback to groups depending on the way it's been uploaded. So sometimes it may be sent to the group leader for distribution to the group. Individual written assessment tasks may be graded against a thing called a rubric, and you may have seen this sort of thing in high school, and quite often rubrics are put up for some subjects. A rubric is a grid which outlines performance bands, so what criteria you make or achieve will determine whether it's a passing grade, a credit grade, or a fail grade. So sometimes it will be marked against a rubric and it will be ticked or highlighted against the rubric to determine where your assessment task has fitted. Usually, and this is again noted in subject outlines, final assessments are not returned with feedback, but comments are available or feedback is available from your subject coordinator. And this will be after the final grades are released. If you've had an examination assignment, you will not be able to take away a copy of the examination, but a subject coordinator or tutor can talk you through where you earned marks or things that needed to be done better. Please use the feedback and the comments. And I've got Belinda here with me at the moment who's just had a wry smile with that comment. We love giving feedback, but we also love to see how feedback is used. There is nothing more frustrating than giving someone feedback and then that feedback's been ignored for the next assignment. The feedback is there for a purpose to help you improve your outcomes and also improve your grades. Take the feedback from earlier assessments to improve your future assessments. And this will include some of the general feedback, which I'm going to move into. General feedback points can be applied to other subjects and assessments. So if you've got issues around spelling, grammar, these are things that you can take that learning or that feedback and apply it to other assessment tasks. What do some of the standard comments mean? You will find that academics like using some of the same phrases when they're giving feedback. And so one of them is does not meet the criteria. This is where people lose marks. So this is where you need to address the marking criteria. Not meeting the marking criteria can include using the wrong format, for example, submitting an essay instead of a report, or submitting a report instead of an essay. Making sure if it's a report, the subject outline will actually indicate all the sections that need to be included. Make sure you address them all. Not including all elements of the assessment task. And this means that you might have had to answer a question or design a project, and it might require a reflection at the end of it. If you miss a part of the assessment, you will lose marks. Not using appropriate evidence or reference material. We're very heavily into acknowledging the sources of where ideas come from. And if that isn't occurring in your assessment task, that will lose marks. Also failing to properly cite or reference material. So it's not only putting it in there, but making sure it's done in the right way. Not meeting the minimum word count or referencing requirements. So you might be asked to produce or include 5 to 10 references or use particular authors or particular material. Make sure you do what's required. And the minimum word count is there for a reason. We can see word counts, Even if they're PDFs, even if they're Word documents, we can see a word count. So it's really important to do it. And I've had students who've tried to use large fonts to make it look like it's got the right number of pages, but we can also pick up that sort of thing. So make sure you meet the word count. Another one is not actually answering the question. Some students seem to write their own question, and that's not what it's about. You can't make up your own question unless that's part of the assessment task. So answering the question that is actually asked is important. And our questions are designed around the learning outcomes. So this is where it's important that it all links back together. Some other factors that can result in feedback or commentary is formatting and writing, spelling and grammatical errors. They mightn't seem important, just as the same as poor presentation. All our students are practicing professionals. The whole aim of going through education is that you want to go into law, you want to go into business, you want to become, whether it's for a for-profit or not-for-profit enterprise. These writing skills are the tools of industry and business. So it's not just an assignment. The things around spelling and grammar, learn from them. There are spell checks and grammar checks on your computer. It's a standard tool in Word. Use that feedback. Another one is sentences and paragraphs not making sense. You have to be able to communicate in writing. It is a skill and it is a requirement. And that's what employers are looking for. So making sure that you can read it and make sense. And a little tip on that, if you are reviewing your own work, one of the ways to check that to see if it makes sense is to actually read it aloud. Because when you're reading things on a screen or on paper, your brain will actually fill in the missing elements. But if someone else read it, then they can see the mistakes. But one of the things is, if you read it aloud, your brain actually processes words in a different way and you will hear the mistakes rather than read them. And this is one great way of picking up on some of those things. The other thing is using paragraphs and formatting to make your work clear. Paragraphs give a brain, when it's trying to process information, a rest. So if you have a complete page of text and there are no paragraph breaks on it, it means that the brain is trying to scramble all the information together. There should be at least 2 to 3 paragraph breaks on a page as a minimum, and you can pick that up as a visual check. If you get feedback on referencing and citations, these are some of the feedback pieces you'll get. The correct format needs to be used, and that is ensuring that you use the format that has been specified for the discipline or assignment. For people who've listened to our other sessions, law and business have their own citation requirements, but then other faculties will have different citation requirements. So it's not up to you to choose, you need to use what's required. In-text citations are required for any literature used, and that appears in your reference list. The in-text citations and the reference list need to marry up. If it is in text, it needs to be in the reference list and vice versa. And just as a reminder to cover those points, your assessments will note the required format, and disciplines and faculties have their own preferences. For business subjects, the formatting is Harvard, and for law, it's the AGLC, the Australian Guide to Legal Citation. If you are doing a double degree, you may have differences between each double. For example, ASH, including psychology and arts, use APA 7. So this might be a piece of feedback if you're using the wrong format. And again, ensuring that you've got your in-text citations and that it matches the reference in the reference list. You might get feedback in not using the correct type of literature. Academic literature usually refers to the use of peer-reviewed journals and academic books where it's permitted by your subject. Direct quotes require a page number to show where the quote came from. So it's not just anywhere, or you're not expecting someone to read 25 pages of a journal article to work out where your quote came from. What's known as empirical evidence, if you get feedback on, hey, you haven't used empirical evidence, or you have an assessment that requires empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is a journal article that is reporting on a study. So it's actually a study that's taken place. It's not just someone's idea. They've had a research population where they've done a survey or they've interviewed a number of people, and it's reporting on that study. So that's what's referred to as empirical evidence. You need to clarify if there are any permitted websites or blogs that can be used as evidence to support your assessment task. You can't necessarily assume. And Wikipedia is great for background, but it's not a quality reference in itself. And if you notice, if you actually look at a Wikipedia page, they actually have stuff referenced. So they're using the same sort of principle. But Wikipedia in itself is great for background information, but it is not a reference per se. So they're the key points that I wanted to cover in relation to assessment. But I am happy to go further into referencing information or to answer questions in relation to assessment tasks. So I haven't had a quick look at the chat, but I don't know if there's anything in there. To our students online, are there any particular questions that you have around assessment? Or I can talk more about referencing and how to find quality references if that would be of help to you. In the meantime, while we're just sitting here at the moment, we have another session on preparing for exams that will come up in week 11 on the 18th of May, and that will talk about, okay, how do I prepare for the multiple choice test? To see that question come up, like a quiz. Okay, so for a multiple choice test, one is reading your preparatory material. What I'll not do is actually, I'll just stop sharing the PowerPoint. And just so you can see me. It's a really, really good question. So some of it will be your quiz, if it's a weekly quiz, your tutor and subject coordinator should indicate what piece of material is. It's usually to validate or discuss material from the previous week. So they will give a range of information that will be forming the background of the test, because it has a lot of information to prepare, around 100 pages. Okay, for 10 questions. Okay, so what I would recommend is, one way is to make study notes. And if you've got 10 questions or there's 100 pages, what is a key heading? And if you make a key heading, you can write a couple of, like a summary. Yes, like a summary. So you want to summarize it because it's easier to read and study. It's actually a good technique for exam preparation as well. To take a topic and have some key points around it. Is there any subject in particular you're talking about? Because we can look at it. marketing. Okay, which is actually the subject outline I have up. So what I will do is just share this because that's, pardon? Mark 310. I've got up a, I'd have to get the subject outline, but for a principal, I can share. I'll just share a screen. Okay, I've got first year marketing up. And to assess workshop group X. Oop, that's assessment 2, sorry. So each week, this is the structure of Mark, but the principle behind this is the same. With the 100 pages you're talking about, is this in a Moodle book or in a textbook? Ebook. Okay. So with an ebook, it would have headings or key topics, and that would be what I would put on the top of a page for a summary note. So what are the key points or takeaways from that particular section? It relates to the lecture. So it's making, have you got that subject? Okay. Yeah. It's about key points and takeaway, and it's writing summary notes. So with, just like I have on slides, I have a heading on a particular slide. So that might be one of the pages that you have in relation to a question or a topic. But what are the key points? Is it around a theory? Is it around understanding a framework, or what is required? So it depends on the content within the ebook, but the headings are a great place to start in the ebook as to creating some summary notes. So reading 10 pages, 100 pages is a lot. It's not about memorizing absolutely everything. It's about taking the key idea and also understanding an example that might help you understand it better. So what I recommend with summary notes is I have a key topic from the week. It might have some key ideas from headings, and then it might be understanding a theory that relates to that, but then an example. The example helps me understand a theory, and the theory explanation helps me understand how it operates. So I would be doing summary notes rather than trying to read and recall 100 pages. I would be taking those key headings from the ebook. Is it an ebook as in a textbook, or an ebook that is on the Moodle site? I didn't quite see all of that question, Belle. I'll just stop that and I can go back to the chat. Another question, how to prepare for the final assessment now? I would be concentrating on your assessments that are due in the session rather than trying to get too far ahead. Is your final assessment an exam or a report? Exam. Okay. With the exam session, the only thing that you could do going along is to prepare a summary sheet for each week. So as part of exam revision, I say to people is your subject outline says it's got a key topic or maybe a couple of topics that is covered each week. That's the starting point for your page. I recommend to students that they have one sheet of paper for each week of the session and you have some summary. Write some small report. Exam to write a small report. What I might do for you is I will look at that subject outline and I can advise you on how to do some summary notes. Because at the moment, I'm not looking at the exact assessment. So if it's an exam and requires a small report, it will depend on how that's structured. But I am happy if you would like to put your either UAW student email or you can email to my email, and I'll put my email in the chat. No, it's all right. That's my email. So if you want to email your email address to me, and I can look at that subject outline and give you some guidance on how to do some summary notes through the session, which will make your revision easier. Do you have any other question that you'd like to ask? It's okay. Okay, if you don't have any other questions, what we might do is we'll finalise this recording, but we will be making it available on our Faculty of Business and Law events page, and look forward to exchanging emails with you. Thank you very much for attending, and thanks.